Welcome from the deep. I am Mike the Finder, and this is yet another episode of
The Graveyard Shift.
Today, we're talking about the best Thanksgiving horror movie ever made? Maybe. As I do, I was looking around the internet for movies to watch, and I was looking up a list of some of the greatest Thanksgiving horror movies ever made. And I came across this. From slashfilm.com, it is labeled the 10 best Thanksgiving horror movies. Now, when I clicked on this, originally I had thought there's just no chance that Blood Rage is not number one on this list. If it's only Thanksgiving horror movies we're talking about, this is like the horror movie for Thanksgiving as far as I'm concerned. This Thanksgiving, it's not
Cranberry sauce.
So I start flipping through this list, and to my surprise, Blood Rage is number 2. And this was updated this year. Chad Collins put this out on slashfilm.com, and, you know, like everything, this is mostly opinion-based, so I can't really shit all over his choice for favorite Thanksgiving horror movie, right? But what I can do is look at his number 1 film, since it's above Blood Rage, and watch it, and review it. Find out, is this actually better than Blood Rage? Kristy from 2014. It is an hour and 26 minutes long. It's directed by Ollie Blackburn, written by Anthony Janowski. Stars Haley Bennett, Ashley Greene, and Lucas Till. Now, I had never heard of this movie before I had read this list, so it was kind of a shock to me that this is at the very tippy top of this guy's list. Now, granted, Blood Rage is not what I would describe as a great movie, but even Chad here agrees. He said Blood Rage probably has the honor of being the most revisited Thanksgiving slasher around. Well, it's not quite the best. It's a gonzo, gory extravaganza that features more practical effects than audiences can shake a turkey leg at. And I totally agree with that statement. Blood Rage is highly entertaining. It's not maybe the greatest movie ever, but it is highly entertaining. So for me, if I'm gonna pull Kristy out every single year as a Thanksgiving movie, Kristy was gonna have to be super, super entertaining to be better than Blood Rage. It's the only reason I keep bringing Blood Rage up is because that is like the quintessential horror Thanksgiving movie in my brain. Now, with all that being said, I was pleasantly surprised with how good Kristy is. There is a lot to like in here. Equally, there is almost as much to dislike in this movie, and it really depends on where your sensibilities are at. If you like low-budget horror, you're gonna be more apt to like this and Blood Rage than you would if you don't like low-budget, crappy, old horror movies. Kristy is different. It's low budget, but you can tell, despite the low budget, that the people who made this really knew what they were doing. There's a lot of really great composition in this. The cinematography in this movie is fantastic, and that was the biggest surprise for me. Just because something is low budget does not mean that the people that made it don't know what they're doing, and there's no better example than this. Now, as far as the plot goes, there's a lot to talk about here. This movie opens with a very intense scene of a girl being killed, and they give you this news blurb about this girl gone missing, and they sort of hint at what the plot is going to be about, but they don't give away too much. Kristy is not the main girl's name. Her name is actually Justine. Kristy is the name that the antagonists use as a way to describe this type of girl. It's almost like Karen. It's just a generic word for somebody who acts a specific way. Kristy is kind of the same thing. It's the cheerleader, perfect car, perfect life sort of a girl. We all went to high school with somebody like this. Kristy is a great name for somebody like that. And they also give us a little bit more where it means follower of Christ, so it's also, you know, somebody is kind of a goody-goody or whatever and has it all, as it were.
You got it all, Kristy.
So with that idea, we automatically have these antagonists that are sort of juvenile and jealous of Justine's life. And so when they meet Justine, they immediately are drawn to her because that is exactly the type of person that these guys are looking for, a Kristy. Now, that idea is interesting. I'm not sure it's the best, but it's sort of vague at the beginning. You don't really know why they are chasing her. Their motives don't become clear until the absolute very end of the movie, but between that, it really drags. And I think the problem is the whole first act is a setup, but because it's only an hour 20 movie, it goes by really quickly, and then the rest of the movie really drags, and it almost feels like they were so excited to shoot the horror slasher stuff that they kind of montaged their way through the beginning. And the entire movie is very montage heavy, so that they don't really have to set scenes up of Justine doing her thing. They can just kind of montage their way through it. It doesn't necessarily hurt it, but it's one of those things that definitely feels lazy. At the very beginning, I was thinking, oh wow, they're actually going through the trouble of setting setting up her every day. That's script writing 101. Your first act should be setting up your character's day-to-day life so we know what their sensibilities are, so we know who they are, what their normal routine looks like. So I kind of thought, oh, they're kind of doing this in a cool way, and then they start to montage their way through it a little bit. But they do it with such good cinematography that it doesn't feel super in the way. She's a college student who is staying home for Thanksgiving. So as far as the whole Thanksgiving movie thing goes, the only thing that is Thanksgiving-y about this is that it takes place over Thanksgiving break. She's not going to visit her family, so she's literally the only person left on campus, which is a fantastic setup for a horror movie. It's a little bit tropey as far as like being the only person around and getting picked on, but I really love that idea, and I think it's a fantastic setup for the story that they're telling. It gives them freedom to use this entire college at night while no one else is around, so not only is it good from a filmmaking standpoint, but it sets a good story. I don't know what the budget was, so I don't know how they got access to a college the way that they did, especially a college that can be filmed so beautifully. The library, the pool, all of it helped to sell this movie. I imagine they probably had access to the college at night, and so most of this takes place at night. And so with that cool setup, I'm sitting here thinking this might be actually pretty decent, because we now have the setup of they're after her. We don't know why. We also have the other thing where she's alone at night on campus. It's a very good setup for a slasher movie, which was surprising to me. And then we get into the slasher side of things, and that is where stuff starts to go a little bit wrong. By the 30-minute mark, I am sitting here going, this is a great setup, and I am ready to see where this goes. We get into the whole slasher side of stuff, where she starts getting hunted and she starts being chased. When we get into that, it's cool for the first 20 minutes or so. By the 55-minute mark or so, I am almost sick of watching them chase her. It's just too much. An hour and a half is kind of the sweet spot for especially horror movies for me. It gives you about half an hour for each act, roughly. You know, there's some play within there. This is an hour 20, and it drags. There's not a whole lot that happens other than they chase her, she runs away. And it happens over and over and over again until the boyfriend shows back up. Once the boyfriend shows back up, there is a point where the camera literally turns around her as if the tables are turning.
No!
It's a little on the nose, but she gets really pissed off, and it's at that point she decides, okay, I'm done running from you guys. I'm going to turn this around and start hunting you. But that takes so long to get to that by the time we're there, I'm kind of already, bored's not the right word, tired of this dynamic. If we skip some of the montage-y stuff at the beginning and sort of give us more of that day-to-day stuff, a little more setup and not rush through the whole beginning part of it, we can put off the slasher chasey stuff for a little bit longer so that by the time we actually do get to the tables turning part, it feels a little more satisfying, because by the time we get to it, it just feels like, oh my god, I just want this to be done. And that's amazing to me that all that can happen within an hour 20, when I can sit through an hour 50-minute movie and never think that way at all. So the pacing is not great, which was kind of a bummer. I was checking the runtime on this several times, which is never a good sign. But overall, the plot is pretty cool. The setup's good, the payoff is okay, and by the time we actually find out why these guys are doing what they're doing, you know, I think it's too little too late, and it's kind of lazy. I'm gonna get into spoilers here, so if you don't want this spoiled, now would be the time to turn this off. By the time we get to the end and she has killed several of them, she finds a phone and she finds evidence of why they are doing what they are doing. They are in a cult called The Fold. These are people that film and upload their kills to this website. And by the time this happens, I'm thinking, okay, I guess I buy that. Just because I can buy something does not mean that it's smart. And maybe that's because this is from 2014 and this was a much fresher idea in 2014 than it is currently. It's very paint by numbers, internet culture-y, death squad cult thing, and the payoff just didn't work for me. There's not really a good payoff that I think you can do with this other than the old, why did you pick me? Because you were home?
Why are you doing this to us?
Because you were home.
That is one of those things that's more terrifying than there's a cult of people that go around looking for Kristys. The problem is that they all feel like jealous teenagers. And maybe that's because they kind of are. At one point she tears the mask off one of them and it's just some guy, which I actually kind of like. I was expecting it to be her boyfriend or some twist M. Night Shyamalan type thing. And I kind of liked that. But at the same time, their motive for doing this is just so fucking stupid that it's hard to look past. They're just jealous of people that they perceive to have this perfect, well put together life, and so they just go around killing them. And for seemingly no reason. It doesn't even seem like they're doing it for Satan or something, which is I thought what the setup was gonna be when they say it means a follower of Christ or whatever. I thought there was gonna be some payoff there, but there wasn't. And so the antagonists have just the dumbest motive ever, and that is when I kind of checked out of this movie. It got me to follow it all the way through, but for me, the ending and the reasons that they give the antagonists for doing what they're doing, it just doesn't work. Yeah, this is a fun movie, and it's above average, but it's not that Thanksgiving-y. Now, you could argue that Blood Rage really doesn't have that much to do with Thanksgiving either, and you wouldn't be wrong. But I do feel like it is a better Thanksgiving horror movie than Kristy is. Now, that's not to say that Kristy is not a good movie. I actually think there's a pretty decent movie in there, even if the pacing isn't great. Can I put this above Blood Rage? No, I don't think so. I think that this is a good number 2. Everything else that's on their list, like Thanksgiving and Pilgrim and Black Friday, deserves to be lower on the list, but I don't think that Kristy is that bad. And if I were making this list, I would probably put this as number 2. I would put Blood Rage first and Kristy 2. I really expected to go into this and really just tear this movie apart, because it was like, you made a horrible list and I'm gonna prove to you why Kristy is not that great of a movie. It's pretty good, and I'm gonna go ahead and rate it a 6 out of 10. This was a pretty fun ride, even if it does drag on and on and on with the chasing and the running away and the chasing and the running away. You know, what separates a good slasher from a bad slasher is, do I actually give a shit as to why they're running away, and do I care whether they get away or not? In Kristy, I did. I'm not saying that Blood Rage is a perfect work of art. This is a bad movie too. It just depends. Do you like your bad movies old and or new and You could do worse than Kristy. I actually think this is a pretty fun ride, even if the antagonists do have stupid fucking reasons for doing what they're doing. So have you seen Kristy? What did you think? Have you not seen it? Are you gonna go watch it now? If you guys like this, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because we got a lot more content on this channel. Every week we put up a movie review, whether that be a podcast, a solo review, a watch along. We do all sorts of stuff on this channel, and it would be awesome if you guys would come along. We recently passed 100 subs, which is super cool. Thank you to everybody that has been subscribing. Thank you for watching this, and I will see you guys next time from the deep. Bye-bye.